Have you ever noticed that some people who hurt you, oppressed you, or acted selfishly and carelessly suddenly vanish from social media, from conversations, from your sight, without any announcement, without a word, without any explanation? You don't hear about their failures, see them punished, or learn of any specific misfortune. Yet you sense something is happening, quietly but unmistakably. Not all consequences are loud. Not all punishments come from external forces. Often, the price paid doesn't come from anyone else, but from within themselves. It's the relationships that fade away unnoticed, the inner turmoil that doesn't show on the surface, the sleepless nights, the sudden waves of anxiety in the dead of night. Some things can't be seen with the eyes, but are felt clearly through prolonged silence and a shift in someone's energy. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach us to hope for others to face consequences. A Stoic doesn't need to prove that justice is being served. They only need to know one thing. Every action has consequences sooner or later, whether anyone witnesses them or not. And most importantly, those who live rightly don't need to see others' consequences to find peace. This video isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's not here to make you gleeful about someone paying a price. Instead, it's to help you recognize that truth always finds its way back, that what we sow eventually bears fruit. And more than that, it's to show you that you don't need to do anything. Just keep living true to yourself. I'll share 6 signs that someone is facing the consequences of their own actions, quietly and without fanfare. Some signs might startle you or remind you of someone, but please remember, this isn't about judgment. It's about truth, seen through the calm lens of an observer, not an accuser. If you've ever felt hurt with no one on your side or wondered, why do those who live wrongly never face consequences? This video is for you. And if while watching, you find yourself understanding more about people and life, hit subscribe to join me on this journey. Because the videos to come won't just stop at consequences, they'll dive deeper into peace, living rightly, and how people truly change from within. Are you ready? Let's move forward together. Number 1, fake happiness as a facade. In an era where every emotion can be wrapped in a beautiful photo, a positive status, or an energetic story, people have become adept at hiding what's truly happening inside them. But if you observe long enough and stay silent deeply enough, you'll uncover a truth. Some smiles are crafted not from joy, but from fear. Some dazzling images aren't signs of happiness, but desperate attempts to keep their world from crumbling. And some people, who once hurt others, are now facing the quietest form of consequence. They can no longer live authentically with themselves. No punishment is heavier than having to pretend to be happy every day. They wake up, look in the mirror, put on a role, pick up their phone, and start telling a story that no longer aligns with reality. I'm fine. I'm living my dream life. I'm happier than ever. These phrases may sound familiar, even trendy, but they might be repeated not to convince others, but to reassure themselves. When someone who lived wrongly, trampling others' feelings, choosing selfishness, causing pain without remorse, reaches a certain point, they encounter an emptiness in their soul. Lacking the courage to face it, they're forced to wear a mask of stability, a mask of moving on, a mask of success. But the cost of that mask is relentless exhaustion. You've likely seen them. They're the ones laughing loudly at parties, always knowing how to pose for the camera, spouting inspirational quotes alongside expensive visuals. They know exactly how to appear fine, but notice their eyes when they're not smiling, their silence when everyone's gone, the hollowness in moments no one's filming. They're trying to fill a void that material things or praise can't touch. Stoic philosophy says, those who live rightly don't need to flaunt. Those at peace don't need to prove. But for those fleeing the truth, image is everything. They need others to believe they're still strong, invincible, in control. Because once the curtain falls, all that's left is emptiness. And that's their greatest fear, not losing reputation, but being forced to live authentically when they're not ready. Someone who betrayed, abandoned, or made others cry may go on as if nothing happened. But deep down, there comes a moment when they ask themselves, am I really as happy as I'm showing? If they're honest, the answer is often no. They don't dare pause, fearing the truth will rush in. They keep running, keep posting, keep smiling. Because if they stop, everything might collapse, and no one wants to fall apart in their own eyes. You might wonder, why do they seem to live so well after doing something terrible? The better question is, are they really living as well as you see? Happiness isn't a collection of pretty photos. Peace isn't a string of vacations. Living rightly isn't measured by likes or public congratulations. Sometimes living authentically is the most painful thing they lack the courage to do. Let me share a story. A man once betrayed his long-term partner for a calculated choice. He believed he deserved a better life, a higher value partner, a career with fewer ties. He left without a genuine apology. Years later, his ex-partner was happy, mature, and living true to her values. Meanwhile, he, despite his vibrant appearances at lavish events and tales of success, suffered chronic insomnia, mild panic attacks at night, and constantly told himself, I did the right thing. I don't regret it. But in truth, he did. He just couldn't let anyone know. See, consequences aren't always accidents, material losses, or public failures. Sometimes the consequence is a life spent pretending. It's waking up each morning unsure of who you are. It's acting so much you forget what your real emotions feel like. It's not daring to sit quietly with yourself, fearing the truth will knock. Truly happy people don't need to tell the world they're happy. Truly peaceful people don't need praise to feel worthy. Those who live rightly don't care what others think. They simply live. And that grants a freedom those who live wrongly can never have. Not because anyone stops them, but because they've trapped themselves in their own performance. If you've ever doubted someone's perfect life, if you've sensed something off despite their bright smiles, your intuition might be right. They're not living authentically. And sometimes that's the clearest sign they're facing consequences. Not from you, not from life, but from their own disconnection within. And you, watching this video, if you've been hurt by someone living falsely, if you felt it's unfair that they seem happy while you carry the pain, I want you to know, don't let appearances fool you. Truth doesn't need proof. Justice doesn't need a declaration. Everything has its cycle. You just need to live authentically, live rightly, and life will answer for you. If this sharing helps you see more clearly what's happening around you, leave a comment below, even a short one. I understand. That's enough for me to know this video is speaking to thoughts you've had, but never voiced. And if you want to keep diving into life's truths, where emotions, reason, and philosophy intersect, hit subscribe. Not for me, but because you deserve a space to hear what's real, think deeply, and heal through understanding. Number 2, subtle erosion of their world. Some collapses don't come with a loud explosion, a dramatic moment, or an obvious catastrophe. Instead, they happen quietly, gradually, like a small crack in a glass that no one notices at first. Each day, the crack grows, spreads, weakens, until one unexpected day, everything shatters. And the strangest part is, the person involved is often the last to realize it. Consequences don't always manifest as grand events or loud punishments. One of the most profound forms of consequence is the slow, subtle erosion of the world someone has built. It starts with small things. A close friend stops calling. A colleague no longer offers help. A partner declines to collaborate without explanation. A once tight relationship turns cold and distant. It all happens without complaints, without accusations. Things simply drift away. Those who have lived wrongly don't notice immediately. They think they're still in control, still influential, but in reality, they're losing their influence without even knowing it. Not because the world is against them, but because the world is no longer revolving around them. People who once cared lose interest. Those who forgave choose silence. Those who trusted become wiser, more discerning, and start to withdraw. The universe doesn't need to speak. It simply gradually takes things out of your hands when you're no longer worthy of holding them. The most painful part is this. No one says it outright. No one blames. No one confronts directly because there's no one to point the finger at. They're left asking themselves, why is this happening? And in that question, the seeds of either awakening or turmoil begin to sprout. I once saw someone who held a high position in a community. They had a voice, influence, respect. But overconfident in their status, they began abusing their power, manipulating others' emotions, dismissing advice, and acting unfairly. At first, no one reacted. People tolerated, overlooked, maintained respect. But over time, one by one, they withdrew. No fuss, no criticism. They just stopped showing up. One day, that person looked around and realized they were alone. This is erosion from within, the consequence of a series of careless, unmindful actions. They weren't harmed by anyone, nor openly opposed. Their past actions simply silently eroded the foundations around them. And when those foundations, career, reputation, relationships, trust, are gone, even if they're still standing, still speaking, still appearing, they've long been hollow inside. Stoic philosophy teaches, don't cling to external things, for they can vanish at any moment, often when you haven't lived kindly enough to keep them. Reputation doesn't come from what you say, but from how you live when no one's watching. Relationships aren't sustained by promises, but by consistent, kind, enduring actions. A career isn't built on image, but on the trust others place in you. When you break that trust, the world doesn't collapse immediately. It just slowly drifts away from you, one person at a time, one opportunity at a time. And then you find yourself in a place that was once lively and loud, now eerily quiet, forcing you to ask, what did I do wrong? The answer often lies in what you overlooked, dismissed, or refused to take responsibility for. There was a man, highly successful in his field, with a great team, loyal companions, and people who admired his character before his talent. But he changed. He let his ego lead, began manipulating, imposing, and stopped listening. When criticized, he called it jealousy. When others left, he labeled it betrayal. He remained confident because a few stayed by his side, until the last one quietly withdrew. Left alone, he realized no one truly wanted to listen to him anymore. No one proactively offered collaboration. No one genuinely supported him. Everything became distant. Despite outward success, grand events, and polite greetings, it was all superficial, no longer a real connection. That's when he saw his true world had crumbled bit by bit, unnoticed. This slow erosion is one of the heaviest forms of consequence. It doesn't make you fall right away. It lets you keep going, living, working, but the emptiness grows. The things you thought were your foundation, that gave you meaning, are gone. You're no longer the first person others turn to for help, no longer the one mentioned with respect, no longer the center of trust. That's the price of not living rightly. The scariest part? It doesn't come all at once. It creeps in, like living in a beautiful house with tiny leaks, walls slowly seeping, foundations nibbled by termites. You think everything's fine, until one day you wake up to find the house collapsing in disbelief. If you've been hurt, had your trust drained, been abandoned, used, or manipulated, remember this. You don't need to see their grand failure. Be patient, and you'll see their world quietly shrink. They'll lose support, attention, respect. They'll still exist, function, speak, but no one truly connects with them anymore. If you've witnessed this silent cracking in someone, if you've sensed someone losing everything without anyone pointing it out, leave a comment below. A single word, true, is enough. Because what we're talking about isn't who's right or wrong, it's how the world operates with quiet, fair order without saying a word. If you want to continue this journey of understanding life, people, and maintaining true inner peace, I invite you to subscribe. Here you won't find judgment or manufactured drama, just truth, gentle but profound. And that's what makes you stronger from within. Number 3, obsession with the past. There's a form of consequence that's rarely noticed but profoundly common and subtle. When someone can't let go of the past, they live in the present, but their mind is trapped in what was. Each step they take echoes old voices. Every time they speak, it's about something that happened long ago. And the strange thing is, they don't revisit the past to learn or heal. They repeat it because they can't let go. They're held back by the past, an invisible hand pulling them as they try to move forward. This obsession with the past is a form of inner punishment. It keeps someone from finding peace with what they have now or dreaming of something new. No matter how much success they build in the present, no matter how beautifully they paint their life, a part of them remains stuck in a time that's gone. It might be a mistake they haven't dared to own. It might be someone they hurt. It might be a selfish choice they outwardly justify but inwardly wrestle with. They revisit old stories as a way to control guilt. They retell a version where they were misunderstood, forced, or had no choice. They try to reshape memories by repeating them. But memories don't change easily. The more they speak, the shakier their reasoning becomes. And the more they try to prove their past was right, the more their present unravels. A healthy person views the past as a lesson. They accept what went wrong, learn from it, and move forward with clarity. But someone living with consequences can't do that. They're stuck in a loop of self-justification. They don't share old stories to understand themselves better, but to convince others, and sometimes themselves, that they weren't wrong. The truth is, if you truly believe you weren't wrong, you don't need to keep repeating it. You just live, letting the past fade quietly. This obsession erodes the present slowly. It makes them distrust new relationships, fearing a repeat of the past. It keeps them from opening up fully, their mind filled with doubts, defenses, and old scripts. They don't live authentically in the present because part of them is still fighting things that no longer exist. I once knew someone who seemed strong and successful, claiming they regretted nothing. But in private conversations, they always found ways to bring up an ex, not to disparage or praise, but to analyze, justify, explain why the relationship ended, why they weren't wrong, why anyone else would have done the same. At first, it seemed like sharing, but when it repeated year after year, it became clear they couldn't let go of something deep inside, and that held back their progress in love, spirit, and career. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach us to deny the past, but warns against living in it. A Stoic faces the past like a student reviewing an old test. Note the mistakes, understand why they happened, then close the book and move on. You can't live holding on to an old test, refusing to progress. But those who live wrongly often share a trait. They don't learn. They try to rewrite the score. And when they realize they can't, they retell their story with a defensive tone, as if words could rewrite history. There's a profound consequence here. A life that can't move forward, not for lack of opportunity, but because the past holds their mind captive. Their present actions are just cover-ups, evasions, attempts to fill a void. New relationships aren't genuine. New choices aren't rooted in awareness, but in countering the past. They don't go anywhere. They circle in place like someone lost but refusing to admit they took a wrong turn. If you've known someone hurt you who keeps revisiting the past as if justifying their actions, know they're not truly okay. A free mind doesn't dwell on the past so much. They might reflect on it clearly, learn, and let it rest. But someone who drags it up in every conversation, every moment of unease, every mention of back then hasn't healed. And often, they're the ones being punished, not by anyone else, but by unaccepted memories. This obsession also blocks gratitude for the present. They can't fully feel joy because everything good is compared to the past. They can't cherish people now because they are shadowed by old figures. They can't embrace life's beauty because their mind asks, will this be like last time? And so, they push away what could make their life better, simply because they won't accept that the past is gone. If you've met someone like this, or been that person, leave a comment below. Not to judge, but to acknowledge that some things we can't voice feel lighter when someone else does. A single word, true, is enough. I'll know you're here, and you understand what I'm saying. If this video touches something deep within you, I invite you to hit subscribe. Not for more followers, but so you have a space for calm, honest, mindful perspectives in your journey. Because here, we don't relive the past, we learn from it and move forward with open eyes and an unburdened heart. Number 4, loss of trust in others and self. There's a loss that makes no sound, goes unnoticed at first, and lacks a name, yet its destruction is more devastating than any shock. It's when someone gradually loses trust, not just from those around them, but more critically in themselves. When this happens, they may still laugh, live, and function in the world, but inside they're unraveling in a way nothing can repair. This is one of the harshest consequences for those who've caused harm. They no longer trust others, and worse, they no longer trust themselves. Trust is the glue of relationships, personal growth, and inner peace. It's not something you can borrow or fake once it's been trampled. A person might deceive others for a while, charm with cleverness, or hide behind a facade of confidence, but they can't fool the loss of trust. When you break trust once, you don't just lose another person, you lose the foundation that keeps you steady in life. Others' trust is a mirror. When you shatter it, the shards may not pierce them, but they'll cut you every time you look back. Someone who's lied, betrayed, or chosen wrongly while justifying their actions will slowly feel the chill around them grow. At first, they think others are just busy or no longer matter. But over time, they realize no one truly trusts them anymore. Their words are met with caution. Their opinions are double-checked. Their actions are watched with skeptical eyes. The deepest pain is that no matter how hard they try to fix it, trust once lost is not easily regained. No punishment is heavier than living among those you once called close, yet no one shares openly anymore. You ask questions, but get curt replies. You tell a story, but no one's interested. You propose an idea, but it's met with silence. It's not because they hate you, it's because they no longer trust you. And they don't trust not because they're wrong, but because you've disappointed them too many times. Those facing this consequence often try to overcompensate to prove they're still okay. They laugh louder, talk more, act friendlier, because they sense the growing coldness around them. But strangely, the harder they try to seem at ease, the more others see they're not. Human intuition is sharp. We may not say it, but we feel when someone's no longer trustworthy. The most terrifying part is when this loss of trust turns inward. When someone no longer trusts themselves, they begin questioning every choice. Did I do the right thing? Am I being fake? Am I truly kind or just pretending? These questions echo daily, nightly, not loud but persistent. It starts as small doubts, grows into unease, and ends in complete disorientation. If you've deceived others, you'll always suspect others are deceiving you. If you've betrayed, you'll live fearing betrayal. If you've lived falsely, you'll dread someone exposing you. This is the most frightening self-punishment. You don't need anyone to harm you. Being alone makes you uneasy. A glance from someone feels like judgment. A moment of silence sparks countless imagined scenarios against you. Stoic philosophy doesn't care about reputation or external approval, but it centers on living rightly, authentically, with inner strength. One of the clearest signs of lost strength is lost trust, both outward and inward. A Stoic doesn't need others' praise or support, but they need something greater: trust in themselves. Trust that they're doing what's right. Trust that, even if misunderstood, they're on the right path. Trust that even if abandoned, they remain unshaken. Without that trust, you live as if lost. I once spoke with a woman who ended a long-term relationship for selfish choices during a life crisis. She chose her path coldly, decisively, rationally. Years later, despite gaining much of what she wanted, she couldn't sleep soundly. She didn't trust she deserved what she had. She constantly feared others would abandon her. She couldn't open up in new relationships, terrified of being treated as she treated her ex. It was a cycle. No one forced her to pay a price, but she lived with that cost every day. When you lose trust in yourself, you hesitate to make big decisions. You procrastinate. You seek validation from others, even if you were once fiercely independent. You feel smaller, more vulnerable, more doubtful. You let others lead you, control you, because you no longer trust your ability to steer your own life. If this persists, you lose your identity entirely. Not you anymore, but a distorted, fragile, chaotic version. If you've seen someone become this way, no longer trustworthy, no longer steady, no longer carrying the light in their eyes, they may be facing this consequence. And if you're someone they hurt, you don't need to wish them ill to feel vindicated. Knowing they live without trust in others or themselves is enough to see life has balanced itself. If these words bring someone to mind, or if you felt this loss of trust after a wrong choice, leave a comment below. You don't need to say much. Just a simple, "I understand," is enough. It's a signal that this video touches something you've carried but never named. If this video helps you understand others or yourself better, I invite you to subscribe. There's more depth to explore here, not to judge anyone, but to live stronger, steadier, and truer from within. Number 5, meeting their mirror. In life, there are moments when no one needs to speak, no world needs to judge, no grand event needs to unfold for someone to realize they were wrong, callous, or caused harm. These moments often come when they meet another person, a person who mirrors exactly who they were and what they did. They don't need punishment because this reflection alone creates an earthquake in their mind. It's the moment they meet themselves. No consequence is sharper than facing another version of yourself, except this time, you're not in control. You're the one on the receiving end. If you once silenced someone in tears, you now meet someone cold enough to make you feel that loneliness. If you deceive someone calculatedly, you now find yourself in a relationship filled with doubt and insecurity. If you dismissed others' feelings, you become the one left without explanation. This reflection doesn't come quickly. It often arrives when you think you're fine, that life has turned a new page. But when you least expect it, you're placed in the role of the person you hurt. You may not recognize it immediately. Over time, though, familiar patterns emerge. The same indifference, the same silence, the same saying one thing, doing another. The same love offered then withdrawn as if it never existed. Then you remember, that's how you treated someone. Now you're not the driver. You're in the back seat, unsure of what's next. You've lost control, and you have no excuses left. Stoicism doesn't believe in superstitious karma, but it observes human behavior closely and sees everything has a cycle, every choice leaves a consequence, and life, naturally, puts us in the right place to learn unfinished lessons. When you haven't understood the pain you caused, life places you in that pain, not for revenge, but to teach you to understand deeply, to stop repeating the past, to show that everything you do comes back, not as a blow, but as a mirror. Someone who exploited others' kindness will meet someone unforgiving. Someone who controlled others emotionally will meet someone who makes them feel inadequate, never enough. Someone who used words to belittle will meet someone who makes them doubt themselves bit by bit. Every emotion they cause becomes the emotion they now live with. That's how the universe balances things, without a sound. I knew a man, successful, intelligent, influential. He had a devoted partner who listened, endured, waited, forgave. He saw it as a given, even weakness. He left for a better option without looking back. Years later, in a new relationship, he met a woman just like he once was, free, charismatic, intelligent, but cold and noncommittal. She kept things vague, leaving him waiting, guessing, worrying about his place in her life. After a while, he told me, "Now I understand how she felt back then. And the strange thing is, I can't blame anyone. I was like that." Those who live mindfully recognize the lesson in this reflection. They bow their heads not because they're defeated, but because of inner awakening. But those lacking courage choose denial. They'll say the other person is too cruel, too cold, too callous, missing that it's just a mirror. If they refuse to learn or change, life will keep showing them themselves in different forms until they're brave enough to take responsibility. Stoic philosophy teaches, don't avoid truth, observe, acknowledge, face it. When life brings you someone who hurts you the way you hurt others, don't just look at them. Look at yourself. Ask, who was I? What did I do to someone? Is this feeling what I once caused? This reflection can be the start of liberation. When you truly understand how others felt, you stop hurting them. When you know what it's like to be abandoned, you don't leave others in silence. When you feel the pain of betrayal, you live more honestly. That understanding makes you mature, kinder, not out of fear of consequences, but because you've lived both sides of the story. If you've seen someone end up in the same place they pushed others into, if you've watched someone cold now beg for care, or someone dismissive now chase validation, know they're facing themselves. And if you're in that situation, pause. Don't blame or hate. Ask, what in me created this experience? That question, if you're brave enough to answer, can start your healing. If you've been in a relationship where you felt unvalued, ask if you valued others. If you've been cast aside, recall if you've dismissed someone easily. If you felt controlled, consider if you forced others to bend to your will. Everything has a root, not for blame, but for deeper, clearer, truer living. If this sharing sparks a realization, an image, a person, a feeling you've carried, leave a comment. You don't need to elaborate, just one line. I've met myself. That's enough, because only by recognizing it can you truly grow and break that cycle. If you feel these insights help you understand life more deeply, I invite you to subscribe. Each video goes beyond observing others. It helps you see yourself gently, without judgment, and with full awareness. Number 6, the strange silence. For most, silence can be a state of calm, a pause, a personal choice. But for those facing the consequences of their past mistakes, silence is no longer peaceful. It becomes a heavy, suffocating void. No more excuses to offer, no energy to explain, no one patient enough to listen. All that remains is a prolonged silence that forces them to confront themselves, with nowhere left to hide. Silence isn't always a sign of tranquility. Sometimes it's the clearest evidence of an internal war raging fiercely. When someone who once manipulated with words, shouted to impose their views, or glossed over truth with smooth talk, finds themselves with nothing left to say, it's not because they've run out of stories. It's because they no longer have the energy to keep up the facade. They're exhausted, tired of explaining, tired of building a false world, tired because the more they speak, the further they drift from the truth. At first, their silence might seem like maturity, calmness, or thoughtfulness, but over time it becomes clear it's a retreat, a withdrawal from real life, from genuine relationships, from themselves. They don't speak, not because they've moved on, but because they don't know what to say to defend the image they've created. The truth is evident. People have left, and they're left alone with a self they no longer understand. This strange silence is more common than you think. Some who were once vibrant, the soul of conversations, the best storytellers, the sharpest debaters, always with something to share, suddenly go quiet. They sit silently in a corner, disappear from social media, stop posting, commenting, or showing up. You wonder what happened, but no one knows the answer. And in that unknown, something is unfolding. They're grappling with a consequence no one sees: isolation they've created themselves. For those who live rightly, silence deepens their depth. But for those who live wrongly, silence is alarming. It doesn't stem from strength, but from having nothing left to hold on to. No trust, no one by their side, no story they can tell without shame, nothing solid enough to keep playing their role. So they choose silence, not from serenity, but from impasse. Stoic philosophy says, only in silence do we hear the true voice within. But if that inner voice is chaotic, silence becomes torture. That's what happens to those facing the consequences of their actions. No one blames them, no one punishes them, no one points a finger. But silence is the heaviest sentence, because in it, they can't escape themselves. I once met someone who was incredibly eloquent, the center of every conversation. He always had a reason for everything, could twist any situation, make others feel wrong while he was right. Then he went quiet. No more arguments, no more debates, no more trying to win conversations. When I asked why, he whispered, because I know the more I speak, the further I stray from the truth. That was the first time I saw awakening after years of living behind a facade. When someone starts staying silent, not defending, not explaining, not justifying, it's not always because they've risen above. Often, it's because they've hit rock bottom inside. They have no words to shield themselves, so they're forced to sit with every choice, action, and word they once thought clever, justified, or right. In silence, without applause, praise, or followers, those things become painfully clear. For the first time, they see their consequences. This strange silence also shows in their gradual withdrawal from social life. No more initiating meetups. No more showing up at important events. No more participating where they once shone. Not because they don't want to, but because they lack the courage to face those they've hurt. Above all, they fear reflection. They fear someone saying something that could break them. They fear a glance that makes them unable to keep pretending. So they retreat. No one asked, no one pushed, but they step back from others' lives. A Stoic never rejoices in another's silence. They don't wait for the wrongdoer to fall. They observe, and they understand. When someone once loud disappears with nothing to say, no one to hold on to, no inner voice strong enough to lift them, that's when life has done its work. If you've been hurt, abandoned, dismissed, or had your worth denied, And one day you notice they're gone, not because they blocked you, but because they have nothing left to say to you. Don't ask, do they regret it? Their silence is the clearest answer. Not everyone can voice remorse, but when they go quiet, that's when the guilt begins. If you've seen someone who lived wrongly become unusually quiet, less present, less engaged, know they may be facing consequences invisibly. And if you're in that state, if you no longer want to speak, lack energy to share, or feel no interest in meaningful conversations, it might be time to look at yourself, not with judgment, but with honesty. You don't need to tell anyone, but don't run from yourself anymore, because silence without awakening becomes a quagmire. You'll sink deeper until life loses meaning. If this sharing clarifies why someone's silence feels strange or helps you understand your own state, leave a comment below. Just one word is enough. Still. It's your way of saying you're here, listening, and truly grasping what's happening in or around you. If you find value in this video, I invite you to subscribe. Here we don't judge or chase drama. We sit and listen to what's really at work in life, sometimes small, silent, but the greatest truth few dare face. You've just explored 6 quiet but profound signs that someone is facing the consequences of their choices. No loud crashes, no stage or spotlight, no public outcry or condemnation, just subtle shifts unfolding in the shadows of everyday life. Yet these carry the greatest weight because they come from within and no one can escape themselves. If you've been hurt, wronged without an apology, or felt justice was absent, I hope this video shows you. Consequences aren't always dramatic or punitive. Sometimes they're simply someone living with their own fallout, losing connection, trust, or themselves, without anyone needing to speak. You don't need to witness their pain to find peace. Knowing you've lived rightly is enough. If you've erred, hurt others, or chosen ease over what's right, the fact that you're hearing this is a rare opportunity. No one lives without mistakes, but some have the courage to face them and change, while others keep running. Which path are you choosing? Stoic philosophy doesn't make you perfect. It makes you steady, calm, and true. True in action, true in thought, true to yourself. If there's one thing to do after this video, pause and ask, what am I sowing each day? That question can transform how you live. No complex philosophy needed, just honesty. If this video touched something in you, leave a comment, share an experience, or simply write, I'm living rightly, as a way to affirm you're on the path of truth. If you want to continue this journey of awakening, awareness, and growth, I invite you to subscribe. Each week, you'll find a space to reflect, heal, and live strongly. Not to prove anything to anyone, but because you deserve to live true to yourself. Thank you for staying until the end. If you found value in this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it. One timely word could spark real change.